America is home to 33 million small businesses, the beating heart of communities across the country.
And proof that the American dream is still alive.
This is a show about those dreamers and doers and the communities they serve.
Their real life stories.
Their struggles and successes.
Their grit, determination, and passion.
And the people who fight
to keep their American dream alive.
I'm Alfredo Ortiz.
I'm Elaine Parker.
And it's time for another episode of Main Street Matters,
America's small business megaphone.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Main Street Matters. I'm Elaine Parker, the president of the Job Creators Network Foundation.
And I'm Alfredo Ortiz, president and CEO of Job Creators Network.
And you can subscribe to the show at Salem Podcast Network or wherever you get your podcast from. So today, Alfredo, we're going to be joined by our very good friend, Steve Moore. He's an economist and author serving as a distinguished fellow in economics at the Heritage Foundation. And he's also co-founder of the Committee to Unleash Prosperity. And of course, he was one of the instrumental players in drafting of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act back in 2017. So I look forward to talking to him about that. But before he comes on, I wanted to talk about the December jobs report, which showed 216,000 jobs created, beat expectations. And the unemployment rate was unchanged at 3.7%, but the labor force participation rate fell to 62.5%. Make sense of that for our listeners and audience.
A lot of people are leaving the labor force, right? That's the big concern here. And so this robust, job recovery that Biden keeps talking about is just really a farce because he talks about millions of jobs, for example, that he's created under his administration. Well, those millions of jobs were really jobs that, again, just came back after the pandemic. So again, those were basically backfilled jobs. When you really kind of break it down, there are about 4 million jobs overall that he's created. But the concerning part is that, a lot of folks have actually left the labor force, which is why the drop in the labor force participation rate. But that is really a concern because it's significantly under where it was, a few years back. And that's where we need to make sure we get back to. So we got to make sure we have the right incentives for people to get back to work.
Absolutely. So the labor force participation rate is very important. But also, when you look at this jobs number of 216,000 jobs, I said at the beginning that it beat expectations. But when you look at where the jobs were created, it's not really true, is it?
No, it's not. I mean, really, it was basically three sectors. I mean, when you really break it down, the scariest part, about a third of those jobs created were government jobs, right, which are basically taxpayer funds. So those aren't really what I would call real world, real jobs, right, because they are taxpayer funded jobs. The other third roughly were in the healthcare, which is kind of quasi-government already because of Obamacare. And then the other ones basically in terms of like service type jobs, right, and public service jobs. So when you look at the depth and breadth of this jobs recovery, it really isn't significant. We don't see it in manufacturing. We don't see it in, the higher end paying jobs. It really is in the lower paying jobs or government jobs.
And what I, read is that these government jobs, if you look at the monthly average over the entire year for 2023, the monthly average of government jobs created was 56,000 jobs. So I guess in the Biden administration, we can actually say that the government is creating jobs. They're just not productive jobs.
Right. And like I said, they're not jobs from what I would call the real world, right? Which you and I created when we owned our small businesses, and 33 plus million small business owners create jobs out there, right? Those are the real jobs of the real economy. Government jobs really, again, are funded by taxpayer dollars. It really doesn't help when you just have the growth of government, where it just really shows that the economy wasn't growing. That it shows that the government was growing.
And do you want to know where the government's growing? Where all those jobs are being created?
Yeah, please tell me.
In the IRS. All those IRS agents are being hired so they can harass our small businesses I know they keep saying they're going to go after the millionaires and billionaires who don't pay their fair share, but I know where they're really going to go.
Yeah. We've talked a lot this in 2023 about Biden and his failed policies. But, we really have to take a step back, and we really kind of need to start talking about in the greater context of the failed policies of the Democrat Party, because he is definitely the president, but those policies are completely embedded in the Democrat Party. So the issue here is that a lot of the policies that they believe in and that they subscribe to and are pushing down our throats, this is far beyond Biden. And so the scary part here as we go into 24 is that we need to really start talking about how these policies as a party really have affected our country as a whole. And so why it really is about Republicans versus Democrats in this particular case, because Republicans have a certain belief, lower taxes, less regulation, less government. And the Democrats overall just believe more government, more taxes, more regulation. And so there's a fundamental difference here that has to be highlighted. And we've got to see what the results have been. I mean, you look at the crime stats. I mean, it's just been through the roof. It's just horrible across every single state, across every single metro. It's out of control, right? When you look at what's happening at the border and all the gun trafficking and drug trafficking, human trafficking, right? That's also out of control. I mean, the list just goes on and on. The energy policy, of course, which, definitely Biden made that decision, but it really is supported by the entire Democrat Party. And so, that is really kind of the bigger picture that we really should be looking at as we move into 2024.
Meaning, if you remove one person, take that one person, the president out of the scenario, the policies don't go away. They are what that party believes in. And it is contrary to the freedoms that we know, the economic opportunities that we know, and the prosperity that we have experienced under policies that are more conservative and geared more towards, what you laid out. And that's the lower taxes and the less regulations. Right. And just more freedom to make your own decisions. I mean, I know that I don't want the government telling me what to do and how to raise my children and how to spend my own money. And I want to keep as much of it as I can so that I can spend it the way I think. And if I want to give more money to charity or to my church, or if I have, I'm a big animal lover. So if I want to support, animals and helping animals, then that's my decision. And that's my freedoms, but I don't want the government telling me what to do. And for some reason, you're right. The party platform truly believes that Americans are not smart enough to spend their own money and to make their own decisions and set their own course of what they want to do with their lives.
Yeah, like I said, this really does go far beyond just Biden. I mean, and the thing is, it really is even with our backyards, with the school districts, right? And school boards, city councils, the mayors, right? The governors, state senators, right? I mean, it really is a party platform issue. And so, I would encourage us to really continue to have the conversations in that context, not just about one man, Biden, because, frankly, that's what everybody's talking about right now, right? Is it Biden or is it Trump? Is it Biden or is it Trump, right? A binary decision. But it really isn't about two men or two women or whatever it is going to be, but it really is about two philosophies of how we live in this country and how we have lived in this country and what's worked and how we're going to live going forward.
So even if Joe Biden suddenly decides, I think I am too old. I think I can't run. I think I should, turn the mantle over to somebody else or drop out and let, a younger chap or young lady run. It doesn't matter.
A younger whippersnapper?
Younger whippersnapper, yeah. It doesn't matter because those policies are going to end up being the same. They're going to be more geared towards the greater government presence in our lives.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like we're going to have a reincarnation of John F. Kennedy, right? I mean, which, quite frankly, I mean, if he were running right now, he'd probably be, considered almost a radical Democrat in the sense of so far away from what they believe in now. But again, anybody who basically takes that mantle as the nominee going into November, they're going to believe in what the Democrat platform believes in, right? And so again, I think we need to look at the broader context of failed policies of a party versus the failed policies of a man.
Agreed. Absolutely. Well, now it is time for our interview with Steve Moore. And we're going to talk to him about how the economy finished in 2023 and what we should be looking for in 24. He's, as I mentioned earlier, he's also a good friend of Job Creators Network, and he is a board member to Job Creators Network as well. So, Steve, welcome to Main Street Matters, America's small business megaphone.
Hi, Elaine. Hi, Alfredo. I hope you're all well. You guys had a great year last year, and let's hope 2024 is even better.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We got to be praying for some good results in November, right, Steve?
You better believe it, because we can really, this has been such a tough period for small businesses and for workers. And yeah, we need a change of direction, a radical change in direction.
Yeah. Yeah. I think back to the great work that you did on the tax reform and tax cut overall with Trump, and how far below that great success now with Biden and the Democrat Party, how horrible it's been for our small businesses.
Yeah, it is. And I think I first really got hooked up with Job Creators Network when you had your tour around the country. That really made such a huge difference. So, yeah, I mean, one of the reasons this election is so important is that we need to make sure that those tax cuts don't go away.
Yeah.
Especially, Alfredo, as you know, you guys played a big part of making sure that it wasn't just corporations, but pass-through businesses and small businesses that got a reduction in their taxes and regulations. And that was critically important to the strong economy. Incidentally, the one thing that Biden has not been able to repeal has been most of the Trump tax cuts. But if they get a second term, they will absolutely do that for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. It's unfortunate. Some of those great taxes, though, are kind of starting to fade away, right? And we need to make those permanent, and we need to keep pushing for that, Steve. That's for sure. So.
Hey, Steve, I remember when we were doing the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act with you, you came up with a nickname for Alfredo. You called him the Pied Piper of tax cuts.
You guys were how many cities did you go to? I mean, it was amazing all across the country.
Yeah, we ended up traveling in two buses, 54,000 miles, about, I think we hit about 36 states.
Yeah, well, I want people to know that and remember that, the highest income tax rate for small businesses was at that time 40%. And we brought it down to less than 30% for small businesses. And, that's a big deal for, medium, small size business to have that lower rate. So, and also the expensing provision, so businesses could write off, if they, bought an expensive piece of equipment or machinery or computers. That was a big deal too. And so I'm really proud of that. I know you are, and I just want to make sure as a top priority, I know at Job Creators Network, it's to make sure those tax cuts go away, because they keep saying, oh, we're going to tax the rich. We're going to tax the rich. A lot of times when they say the rich, they're talking about a small businessman with 25 or 30 employees.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. I mean, even, they even talk about, raising the rates for corporations. Well, they forget that about 1 million small businesses actually are incorporated. So those are tax increases for those small businesses, right? And, 33 million small businesses, as you know, Steve, out there employing 60 million people. I mean, we can't afford small businesses to fail. We kind of saw what happened during COVID. So we got a preview of what would happen if small businesses went away. It would be destruction of our communities and of our country.
Well, I know one thing, having just met with President Trump about 3 weeks ago at Mar-a-Lago. I mean, he's all plugged into this. He knows exactly what you're saying. And this will be one of his first priorities if and when he is reelected.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, we have certainly fallen far from the policies from the Trump administration and how our small businesses did under the Trump administration. How would you kind of sum up 2023 and the economy? And if you had to look forward with your crystal ball, how are you looking at what 2024 could bring for us?
Well, the first 2 years of the Biden administration were a total disaster. Biden took the inflation rate from 1.6% under Trump to 9.2% 18 months later. I don't know how he did it, Alfredo. I don't know how you're able to screw things up that quickly. So 2021 and 22 were a disaster. 23 was a better year, certainly, because the inflation rate did come down, and that was a very positive thing. We saw some more growth. It's tough to predict about 2024. I think the thing that the Biden administration doesn't understand, and people like Janet Yellen, is that they keep saying, well, inflation is prices are down, but prices aren't down. It's just the rate of price increases are down. So, if you look at the things that people have to buy, they're up by, I saw you, Alfredo, on Fox talking about this the other day. Food prices are up 21%,
Yep.
Energy costs are up 33%, mortgages are up 50%. I mean, come on, how are you going to call that a good economy?
No, I mean, it's crazy. On that interview, I mentioned I went into my local grocery store to pick up a bottle of ketchup, and it was over $9 for a bottle of ketchup. I mean, it's ridiculous. You can't make yourself a hot dog. You can't make yourself a turkey sandwich because that's $15 a pound. I mean, it's just, you can't literally live on what's happening currently.
And, one of the things that, is important for people to realize is that, so when consumers face those higher prices, which they do every time they go to the gas pump or the grocery store, then they need more money. They need higher wages and salaries. So they go to their employer and say, hey, I need more money because everything costs more. Well, then in other words, that's putting strain on small businesses because, they have to pay people more to keep their employees, on the job. And yet they're facing a tough time. So this is something that affects the costs of everything that small businessmen and women buy as well.
Yeah, and I don't think we can keep hitting enough the point that, because the Biden administration loves talking about how inflation's down and look how great things are going and Bidenomics is working, right? We got to keep talking about price levels, right? It's the price levels that people are paying. People aren't paying in percentages, right? People are paying in actual dollars. And the rate of increase is slowing down. And I kind of like making an analogy of, somebody who's gained a lot of weight, 50 pounds in 1 year, and we're celebrating the fact that you're only gaining now 5 pounds a month.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
That's a good analogy.
But it's still gaining, and the damage has been done already.
And the other thing that, you asked me what concerns me, clearly the higher prices. The other thing that's really a total disaster is the finances of our country. Yeah. I mean, what we're seeing, as you all know, $34 trillion in debt. The Biden baseline, if he, God forbid, were to get 4 more years in office, he's by his own budget. I'm not making this up. He goes from 34 trillion to 50 trillion. I mean, it's almost, this is modern monetary theory. We can just borrow and borrow and borrow and borrow till we destroy our country. And, I don't care if people are Republicans, Democrats, Independents, everyone knows this is catastrophically wrong for our country. And so you've got record amount of debt at the government level. And then, as you guys know, you got over $1 trillion in credit card debt. And then this new thing that is really worrisome is this, what do they call that? Where you get from the store,
it's like the modern version of layaway, right?
Yeah, what's it called? What's that term they use for this?
Buy now,
pay later, or something like that.
Buy now, get now, pay later.
Yeah, that's so people are doing more and more of that. So at some point, these bills have to be paid, and so that makes me very nervous about 2024. I always root for prosperity, and I hope that we get a good economy. But we got a lot of headwinds that Biden has created.
Well, Steve, we've got really high interest rates right now that obviously has dried up a lot of credit for our small business owners. We've got the jobs report for December that came in. Alfredo and I were discussing before you came on, 216,000 jobs created, which the headline is it exceeded expectations. But when you drill down, you've got, 50,000 jobs or so being created in the government. It's pretty non-productive jobs when they're taxpayer jobs.
So when that jobs report came out on Friday, I forget, Alfredo, whether you were on with me. You do that Maria show quite often. But anyway, they announced the jobs numbers. Oh, this is a good jobs number. 200,000 jobs, that's a good number. And, the problem is you don't have time to actually read through the report. Right. And, then I got off the air and I looked at the revisions, huge revisions downward. By the way, they've revised downward over the last year, 450,000 jobs. That's a lot.
Yeah.
And then you look at the fact that you had a government is right now basically the fastest growing employer in the country. That's exactly the opposite of what we want.
Right.
And then I think something that I learned from you, Alfredo, is that a huge number of these jobs, there were more people taking second and third jobs in this report than taking a first job, because we had 500,000 people dropped out of the labor force. So
exactly.
If I look at that, that's a lousy report. That's not a good report.
Yeah, I wish, because along the day, others were reporting, even on Fox Business, for example, that it was still a good report. It really was not a good report at all. If you look at the whole year, right, Steve, about a third of all the jobs that were actually created were government jobs. I mean, this is taxpayer-funded jobs. This is not real jobs in the real economy, right?
Yeah, and the other one, by the way, is healthcare, and that's because government can't get control of the healthcare costs, and that's a quasi-government industry now. So, we're growing to the extent we're growing jobs. It's all in the wrong places. We want people making things. We want people working for small businesses, manufacturing, construction, mining, transportation, warehousing. Those jobs are actually declining, and that's very worrisome. And the other thing is why we can't. This is a problem for small businesses who are hiring. They can't get the workers, and you've got a huge increase in the number of people who are on disability. You've got a huge number of people who are still getting, very munificent government benefits, and that's tough to get, the workers on the job that we need. So it's not a pretty picture right now.
Yeah, no, it's not. Steve, one thing you mentioned is, the deficit, right? And debt and deficit that we have, and the debt specifically, where we're at about 34 trillion, I believe is the number currently. We've talked a lot as a party about a constitutional balanced budget amendment. Don't you think it's time that we actually do it?
Well, I'm only laughing because, of course, it is. And I've been working on that for 35 years. Boy, would I love to see that. As you know, 49 states have balanced budget requirements. Yeah. And what's that?
No, you're right. Yeah.
And you've got, there's no discipline whatsoever. We need spending limitations. We need prosperity. I mean, the best way to lower the deficit is to put more people to work, get our businesses healthy again, get rid of all the restraints. I'm telling you, you talk to the small businessmen and women more than I do, but I do talk to them. And what they're saying right now, is they're not so, look, the taxes are certainly a problem, but they're telling me these new regulations from the Department of Labor, from the EPA, from the SEC, just have them running scared right now. And I just talked to a small businessman the other day who said, they're trying to put my business. I have 60 employees, and he creates, weatherization products, and the EPA is trying to put him out of business. And I feel, he put his whole life into this business, as you know, and the government's just so capable and willing to shut the businesses down.
Well, what's really scary, Steve, is that I actually truly believe that this is their actual plan to shut down small businesses overall, because they literally are the antithesis of what they believe in, right? It's, hard work, you believe in, free enterprise and freedoms. If you work hard and by the rules, you can achieve anything you want. You can be as successful as you want. If you want to be a multi-billionaire, you're free to do that, right? From a small business. But it's everything that the government, the Democrats hate, right? They can't corral them. They can't control them. They'd rather have 6 banks than have, community banks, for example, right? Because they just want to have absolute control over every aspect of people's lives.
That is so true. And I'm sure you're aware of this new National Association of Manufacturing study that found that the cost for small manufacturers with less than 100 employees is $50,000 per worker. $50,000 for every worker. So you've got 20 workers. That's $1 million.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And whereas like for a big multinational company with 1,000 employees, their average costs are high, 25,000. But this is a really important point. The regulatory burden favors big companies over small companies because the big companies can have economies of scale. They can spread those costs. Right. Smaller business can't. And so, but whether it's $25,000 per employee or $50,000 per employee, that's a hell of a lot of money. It's money that can't be used to invest in the growth of the business. And I always go back to our friend Bernie Marcus, who this just scares the crap out of me when he said, I could not start Home Depot today. Didn't he say that, Alexandra? Alfredo?
Oh, yeah.
Didn't he say, yeah, under the rules today, I could not start my business.
Yep. And it really has gotten worse. I mean, that is the one thing we loved about, President Trump is he really got that as a business person. He understood the impact of regulations on businesses, whether, large, medium, or small, quite frankly. But he understood the impact, the negative impact, and I would say over regulations, right? Because I'm not advocating for no regulations.
Yeah, sure. Well, at the cabinet meetings, I was able to sit on one cabinet meeting that Trump had, and it was very interesting that one of the first things he said at the meeting, he'd go around the table of his cabinet officers and say, what did you deregulate? Right. Biden's saying, what did you regulate? And Trump would say, what regulations did you get off the backs of businesses? So we need that kind of mentality. So that's why it's so important that we have a business person, man or woman, running our government, not a career politician.
Yeah. Well, Steve, before we let you go, I'm wondering if you can leave our listeners and the folks watching with a positive note about 2024 and what we could hopefully look forward to.
Well, the stakes are, we always say this, but the stakes really are quite high. I mean, can anybody in their wildest imagination imagine 4 more years of Joe Biden in the White House? I mean, that would be catastrophic. So I'll just leave your viewers and listeners and members with this thought. I've been meeting pretty regularly with President Trump about once a month, and we talk for about 30 to 40 minutes. And I got to tell you, the guy's got his game face on. He is so focused. I don't know how he does it. They want to put him in jail for 550 years or something like that. And he's focused on how we can rebuild the American economy. And I worked with him in 2016 too. There's a good Trump and a bad Trump, and what we're seeing right now is the good Trump. He's not talking about the election and so. Well, he still does sometime, but he's really focused on how to rebuild the economy. I asked him, what's the first thing he's going to do? And you've probably heard him say this, but he said, I'm going to have on January 22nd, 2025, I'll have a stack of paper on my desk in the Oval Office, and they will be to rescind virtually every executive order that Biden has put in place. And I said, well, how long do you think it'll take to get the economy moving again? He said, give me 6 months. So we could see a roaring economy that helps businesses and workers, really quickly if Americans have the wisdom to change directions.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And before we actually sign off, Steve, I know I've had the pleasure of actually being on your show, your radio show, on Saturdays. Where can listeners or viewers find you on your show?
Well, I'm on WABC radio 1 o'clock to 2 p.m. on Saturdays, the More Money Show. And so I love to have, and I try to get people who are really smart, who know about money and who know about business. And that's why you're a regular on the show. And I want to just say thanks again for coming on, and love to have you on in the weeks to come.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Steve.
Well, Steve, thank you so much for taking the time to join us on Main Street Matters, America's small business megaphone. And thank you to all of you for listening and taking the time to tune in with us. Main Street Matters is part of the Salem Podcast Network. New episodes debut every Wednesday and Friday. Please subscribe at salempodcastnetwork.com or wherever you get your podcasts from. And we'll see you next time.